Okay, so welcome to our next session. This is our last session before the break. I'm really pleased to introduce Kiran Rayachoti, who's Vice President of Engineering at Publicis Sapient. And I'm really very excited about this presentation. It's on how ChatGPT or AI and ML impacts testing industry. Is this something that will complement or complicate? We recently had Unicom had a conference in London almost just exactly a month ago, 25th of May. And this is something the whole day that came up. A lot of people were discussing it during the breaks. It's a really hot topic right now. So I'm really interested to hear your talk. So Kiran, I will hand over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Alec, and thanks Unicom for having me on this forum. I'm going to share my screen first. Let me know if you're able to see my screen.
Looks fine.
Okay. Thanks everyone, and good morning, good afternoon, or whichever the geography you're in, right? So hi everyone, and thanks for joining this session. So what actually I'm going to cover today's session is about how the generative AI, right? So, or rather the ChatGPT is the very common word now, right? Going to impact the testing industry, right? So that's what actually my topic would be. And and actually, right, so the reason actually I want to say whether it complement or complicate testing, so I'll explain when we go into the slides actually what is there in store, right? So for all the testing industry, and also many of the aspiring testers, automation testers, and all the people from the domain. And let me just go to my quick introduction before I actually go into the slides. So Alec already called out, but I'm just a very quick snapshot. I have like close to 20 plus of years of experience in the testing domain. I've been worked with large brands across the world, right? So been in multiple geographies, and did a lot of transformations from QA to QB for many organizations, right? So it's a brief about me, and I'm working on the current Gen AI as well in a couple of my projects, which is where I thought it's actually a good topic to discuss and just share what we are doing as well. So with that, right, so first of all, right, before actually I even go into the ChatGPT, right, so I don't know how many of you know about Gen AI, which is generative AI, right? So because it's a pretty common word now. If you actually search in Google, this is the most searched keyword, right? Even than something like cloud or DevOps, right? Because if you actually look at cloud, DevOps, or data, these are the most popular words in actually, if you actually look at the Google search terms, because those are the popular terms for like quite some time, right? But if you actually look at now Gen AI, it is almost superseded almost all the other kind of hot topics in the market. And primarily the reason is because it's vast, the topic, and its impact is vast, right? So in a very simple terms, right, so Gen AI is nothing but a branch of artificial intelligence, you can actually say, right, where it actually automatically generates not just the text, it generates even the music for you, it generates the content, it generates the images, it generates even the code, right? So that's where it got everybody's attention, because when it started generating the code, and that too in a more right, so close to accuracy, right, what we needed. That's the primary, right? So primary focus of the right intention of the Gen AI. And there are some actually examples of Gen AI, right? So because I don't want again people to get confused, ChatGPT is the only Gen AI in the market available, because I just want to give a little bit more right color on Gen AI, exactly what it is, right? It's actually been there in the market. It's not just first time we are seeing in ChatGPT. It's been already there. Like for example, whatever deepfake technologies you look at, right? So the natural language processing, or the, for example, the style GAN for images, right? Some of these things already there is a Gen AI, right? So, and there are some tools already in the market like TensorFlow. I think most of you would have heard, right? So we have done a project as well in TensorFlow, like kind of POC, not the full-fledged project. So TensorFlow, like PyTorch, right? So Magenta again is from Google, right? So there are some, these tools are already available, and in this space now actually we got OpenAI's tools, which is ChatGPT, which became more popular, right? So, and again I will explain why, what and why, right? If you actually look at ChatGPT, coming to our topic of discussion, right? So, and in ChatGPT is more advanced AI model, right? So which actually OpenAI actually released it to the market, right? In terms of deep learning, right? And in terms of generating the text in terms of generating the text and the patterns, right? And the sources actually it gets it from, right? And it is very close to accuracy that we needed, and it is a more advanced, right? So I would say compared with all the other tools earlier, because TensorFlow and PyTorch and all actually more, they are holistic tools, they're more generalized tools, right? Not particularly to only conversation. But ChatGPT, whereas focuses completely, right, so only on the conversation AI, right? So that's where it gets interest, because the response is almost equal to like a human like responses, right? And there are few things in ChatGPT, right? So if you quickly look at, right, so the important thing is your interaction with the ChatGPT is very important, which is why it is called prompt, right? We call it as a prompt, and this is a very big subject in the current world. If you actually look at, so the reason actually even I wanted to do a red circle there, because so you can actually see lot many courses on prompt engineering. If you go to actually any, I'm just type in Google prompt engineering, you will know how many courses are already there in the market, right? And prompt engineering is nothing but the input that you are giving to the chat GPT. And the reason why this is more important is because if someone actually organization, let's say, decides to use chat GPT in their right SDLC, right, or in their testing, then everyone cannot actually ask their own questions and right and use ChatGPT, because the way you are asking question, the ChatGPT response will change. Even a slight variation in your question might change completely the response, which is why the prompt engineering is very important. Everyone has to understand the prompt engineering and the RGC framework. So once you understand this, then you will become very savvy, right, to ask the questions to the ChatGPT and get the right responses that you needed, right? So, and everyone in the team will have the same understanding. So it is more like, you can say it's a kind of a standards or kind of language, that input that you are giving to ChatGPT, which is why this is more important. And how it actually, right, generates a very high level view I'm giving you here, right? So because just to understand what ChatGPT, once the user gives the prompt to the chat GPT, then it actually breaks down into the tokens. So each token is processed either as a full word or as a sub word, and that based on the token, right, it generates the response back. One interesting thing with ChatGPT is it maintains the context, right? So when I say it maintains the context, let's say I'm talking about an API automation, right? So I'm asking what is the best tool in the API automation. Let's say it comes back to me and says rest assured or like karate, right? And I will ask, okay, can you write a karate script for open API like a weather, right? So it actually gives me a karate script, which I no need to do any changes, right, for the open API. Right, that's the advantage actually we have, right? So it maintains the context, and within the same API context, you can ask so many questions. It will actually give you all relevant responses, right? So that is why actually it's a contextual as well, and the response it generates is based on the context. And again, why, right? So because like I said, PyTorch is there, like for example, TensorFlow is there. Why only ChatGPT is so popular right now, right? So because one, it's language capabilities, right, and ease of use, right? So anything ease of use gets popular very easy, and this is a classic example, right? So even though you have TensorFlow, PyTorch, which you can achieve maybe similar to this, not exactly like this, right? So why people hasn't used so much is because the ease of use. I mean, those all comes with a heavy baggage of right implementation, right? And the research and innovation that has been done in ChatGPT and the responses it comes, and it is trained actually the pre-training that is done at a large scale, right? You can actually try any kind of tool in the market, a script for a, right? Just an example, I'm saying, like if you want to write a Selenium script, if you want to write a rest assured, you want to write even a Cypress, which is little again coming new in the market. So even Cypress scripts, it gives exactly with the syntax, right? So that's the advantage you have, which is why it's more popular, right? So and the impact on multiple use cases, right? Not just only one industry, it's actually impact on multiple use cases. So it is actually having a tremendous impact. And adding to that, right, so the OpenAI, right, the engagement how they did it is very actually right. So very wonderful engagement they did with the community, because they actually given it ChatGPT 3.5 free for everyone, open. They collected the feedback based on the responses. They are correcting on every day-to-day basis the responses, and it is actually the way how the responses are coming now, it's actually very fascinating, right? So that's one of the reason as well how they are engaging with the community is actually a very good way the way they did. And that's why actually, if you see, ChatGPT actually superseded almost all the other tools, right, in this space. So with that, right, so how it impacts the testing industry, right? So quickly, very quickly, right? So I want to just talk about how the testing industry actually coming from the last 3-4 decades or 3 decades probably. If you see till 2000, majority of the era, I would call it as a manual testing era because of not much automation. So WinRunner was coming at the end of late 90s, but still it's majorly a manual testing era, right? Then you got a like a QTP in the market, right, or UFT, which became very popular, and most of the companies, most of the teams actually purchased the license and used the tool, and it was like almost like number one in the market, right? So during those days, like 2000 to 2007 days. And if you see, the trend actually got changing, right? Earlier it was like 10 years, any trend you have, it will stay for 10 years. But now the trend got to 7 years. And when it comes to the next 7 years, right? First, when it was QTP, it is all VB based tools, people started using it. Then actually people started slowly moving towards Java, and Selenium, Vatir, and few other tools actually became very popular. So now it is a moderate automation era, right? I would say, because it's not still 100% people are able to do automation, but still they were trying to do. But one thing, actually good thing is, this era, what happened is many of them moved to open source tools, right? So till 2007-8, it was all commercial tools, but many actually moved towards the open source tools. That's one good change, right, happened. After that, right, so actually even the other extended languages as well is popular, and majority of the focus now is DevOps and CI/CD pipeline, how we can actually have a pipeline based automation, right? So that user no need to actually do manual execution of manual event trigger of the automation suits. So the focus became more into the DevOps era, right? So it happened till before COVID. If you actually look at, most of the people are actually focused on DevOps and automation. Both together they used to talk, right, in many forums and talks. And also, right, and before COVID, if somebody, even till last year, right, I would say, if somebody doesn't know programming in QA, they actually used to actually see a little bit weird, right, to that person, because programming became the most premium skill, right? So in before COVID, right? So that's how the trend has been actually going on, right? And that's what even the industry wants, the companies wanted. Everybody used to start assessing a lot of programming skills in the tester. I mean, forgetting their domain knowledge, right? So even people are not worried if somebody doesn't have a QA domain knowledge, but they wanted only programming knowledge, right? So that is the kind of trend actually happened. But now if you see, the trend became actually 5 years trend now, right? So from 5 years, right, now again we are now into 3 years trend now, because the world is changing so fast, right? So now from 10 to 7 to 5 to 3, now actually every 3 years you can actually see a trend. And now what is actually the trend, right? Just till last year, if you actually look at, different kinds of automation is popular, right? So not just only web and UI, because that actually became a table stake. Now people are more doing on the backend data, different kinds of automation, right? So like, for example, within the non-functional as well, there is a lot of aspects came in, right? So people started actually focusing on wide coverage, right? So types of automation with the wide, again, tools as well, right? Tools, languages and all. Still the language is still the popular till last year, I would say. So people used to say that, okay, you need to have programming when you are a test engineer, right? And different kinds of programming and tools has been tried. But if you see from now to the next 3 years, right, what would happen? So this is actually my personal thought and prediction, right? So I mean, I researched obviously some of the market trends as well, right? So if you actually look at, I haven't put any language there, right? It's only the Gen AI, right? So are the right, the tools might not change, maybe the same might continue, but maybe Selenium will go down a little bit and Cypress will come up, or few other Playwright, like for example, another good tool is coming up, right? So these tools might actually come up, but in my opinion, tools and frameworks, right, so will come and go, right? So but I think the core skill is at the top one, what you are seeing in the other decades. And the coming decade would be the generative AI, right? Because generative AI is going to complement you as a programmer or as a buddy for you, right? So who actually help you, right? Who will help you, right, in making you more productive, in making your automation more scale, right? So that's what about the how the trend is happening, right, in the industry. And automation, just quick snapshot before I move to the next slide. So automation wise, right, so if you actually look at the metrics in the market at the moment, I mean, many people think, okay, I'm doing automation, my teams are doing automation, I know everybody is doing automation, right? So then automation is everywhere, right? But actually that's still an assumption, because I was under the same assumptions till the time I have looked at some of the metrics in the world report, right? The testing world report that gets every year, I go through the report and I make some extrapolations based on the numbers, and I actually aggregate the numbers. So if I actually look at, right, across the industry, still the industry hasn't crossed 40% automation for the functional automation. right? So, but if you ask, everybody say, oh, I'm doing 80%, I'm doing 90%, I'm already 100%, right? But if you look at across the industry, right, so we are still not beyond 40%. And most of the places, API automation is not there. And wherever it is, it's across the industry. If you put together, it is not even crossing 25%, right? So the API automation. And the reason why automation adoption is slow, right? So there are few reasons, and I picked only the primary two reasons, right? So one is the inability to apply automation gaps has increased. So the reason why it is increased, right? So is one is the skill set, right? Majority of the times, the first and foremost reason is the skill set. Skill set, when I say it again, boils down to the programming knowledge of the tester and also the tool knowledge and the hands-on knowledge, right? So now we have a complement, right, for that, right? Earlier it was all programming, right? We talked about. Now from programming again, right? So now you have a Gen AI, right? So where I'm not saying it is only single silver bullet where it will solve all the problems in the world, but it will complement you, right? So to write more faster code to be more productive, so that the tester can actually focus on something else rather than figuring out, okay, how I write this library, right? So how I write this reusable library, how I can write a reusable function for a calendar, right? So instead of that, they can actually focus on something else more important on the strategy side, right? So, and if you see the another metric we got, 46% still doesn't have the automation skills that are required by the companies, right? So this is the data coming from the companies, right? So now I'm saying some of these gaps can be actually addressed, right, as a tactical option, right? I would still say these are all Gen AI is a tactical option. It won't be a strategic option for now, but it will be still a tactical option, right? And coming to, right, so how it impacts the testing industry, right? So because we talked about a lot on Gen AI tools and testing industry, automation industry, but how it impacts, right? At a high level, if you look at, right, so we have requirements, we have a test design, we have a test data, we have execution, analysis, reporting, dashboards. This is the aerial view of any testing project you look at, right? Irrespective whether you're working on microservices, irrespective of whether you're working on, let's say, the UI front end, irrespective of you're working on packages like Salesforce, ADG, or a few other packages, or even ERP products like SAP, right? Even if you're working on any, let's say, big data projects, right? These phases will never change, right? But the way how you do in each phase might change, but these phases will never change. The percentages of these phases also most likely won't change, right? So where a tester will spend the time, right? So I've given both for manual and automation, so you can see how much the teams are spending, right? In some cases, it might be here and there, plus or 5% here and there, but majority, this is what is the trend, right? What I've seen in the last 20 years. If we actually see where Gen AI will impact, right? So because we need to know, because we cannot go blindly and say that, oh, I want to go and impact Gen AI and do everything else, right? Which is why we need to know where exactly it will impact and how much efficiency we are going to get back from the Gen AI. If I look at, right, from a requirement standpoint phase, it's a low impact, right? So you will not have much impact with Gen AI. If somebody telling you, oh, all my requirements will be written by Gen AI and I don't need to spend any time and I can just go and relax and have a cup of coffee, that's not true. So the impact is very low in requirement stage, right? So because still you need a human intervention when the requirements stage, right? So it still is required, but that's what the reason I said low impact is. It can take some of the advantages of like writing a test strategy. You don't need to write like 25 Word document pages test strategy, or you don't need to write like 15-20 slides of PPT. ChatGPT can definitely help you, right? So reducing those efforts, but still some intervention is required, right? And where is a high impact is the test design, right? So this is a fantastic area where we can actually have a wonderful impact, because I myself have seen in two of my projects where we have used this and we got the impact, we got the output, right? So in both either manual or automation, I mean, you're going to have a huge impact of using this, because it is going to complement you like one more resource almost, right? I would say, if I have to tell a typical services language, so you will have an additional extra resource for, right, who will be helping for you while writing all the design. And design, when I say it's test case writing, both in manual and automation. Coding as well comes in the design here. And test data also will have a high impact. But some exceptions would be the banking and financials, where you can't do much of the use of this. But otherwise, apart from those exceptions, but you will have a high impact. And execution will be no impact, right? So because execution is going to happen the way how it is happening, you're doing using grid or parallel execution, multi-ports and all, what you're doing on a cloud or on-premise, that is not going to change. And ChatGPT, nothing is going to help there, right? So maximum one help you can actually look at is how you actually strategize the or optimize the test suits that we can use. But I would say, I think when we create the suits, the individual itself will have much more idea, right? So on creating the suits. And another high impact area is the analysis and reporting. So here the debugging, it's a very powerful tool for actually doing the debugging, where it failed, why it failed, and rerunning of failure test cases, and reporting as well. Bug reporting, if someone want to use, they can very much use, and ChatGPT can give completely documentation of the defect, so that the individual can focus more on, right? So trying and troubleshooting the defects rather than just writing a long report of right in Jira, right? So those areas it will help. And medium impact in the dashboard as well, right? So in the dashboards as well, it will help. So, I mean, I consider this as, if something is less than 15% of effort it is saving, consider it as low effect. Medium impact is about like close to 30%. High impact is about 70%, right? So, and depending on area.
Just under 10 minutes, just a reminder.
Oh, thanks, Alex. And I'm going to finish in next few minutes, maybe next hardly 3-4 minutes. Thanks for reminding me. So these are the areas, right? So if you actually see, these are the areas impact. And here the interesting thing about ChatGPT is, one might have lots of questions in the mind. Oh, what all I can do, right? So what all you can do, you have to decide, right? ChatGPT is a kind of source, abundant source, and you need to come up with innovative ways how you can use this, right? I'll explain about one of the simple use case we did actually, right? So here actually, for your thinking, there is no limitation, right? So how you want to use it, how you want to get the benefit, that is the skill individual need to have now. Individual no need to have a skill of, right, earlier, like we talk about programming, DevOps or anything else. The individual skill should be more on the, right, thinking power now, right? So rather than actually sitting and doing the coding. And this is one example of, right, so ChatGPT sample code, right? You see how it will actually write, create, testing and coding as well. It will write the BDD format, whatever you want. This is actually written by ChatGPT as it is. Actually, I've taken the screen grab. And also below is the complete code for the same test case, right? So, and it is giving complete the test. And somebody might have a question, oh, it is a simple UI test case, so you're able to generate, but it's not easy, right? Because we have APIs, we have microservices and all, right? So then I do have an example of an API, right? If I have to actually use for an API, right? So it still gives me a very much accurate code, right? For even Rust assured, you can Karate, right? So this is the one is the Karate. So where it will actually give me the complete code, how you can write a code, right? So, and even you can actually look at the code, it's executable code it will give, right? So in most of the cases, not all the cases, but most of the cases it gives executable code, so that you don't need to actually depend on now anything, right? Let's say you want to write a library. So earlier, what is the sources are right for us, right? So whether we go to Google or we go and ask one friend who is expert in that area. Now these two actually will be replaced by this, right? So you don't need to go to anywhere. You can actually go to ChatGPT and you can ask ChatGPT to write a library for you. Right, and some sample use cases I have given, but again, like I said, it's there is no limitation here, and it's up to your thinking power and up to your right. So your thinking how you can actually make use of it. So actually, I have used in multiple couple of use cases. Like one I have used in generating the API scripts, automated API scripts, and it worked wonderfully for us for API scripts. Second use case I have used in migration. So migration projects, I personally feel it's a very good advantage. Let's say if client is moving from one framework to the other framework, let's say from Selenium Java to Cypress JavaScript, we used a similar use case where we are able to regenerate the libraries within a week's time. We are able to regenerate close to 100 libraries, right? Manually, if someone has to write those, it would have taken us at least 3 weeks minimum, right? But we are able to complete everything within a week. And almost it is like, if you see, 60 to 65% of the time saving we had already, right? So this is a practically we have seen already in the project, right? So again, I said the use cases you pick is very important, and that is definitely customized for your case, right? So generic use cases will not help here. Just a generic test cases, like I showed you Google test case, right? So generic will not help, right? You need to be very specific, and when you want to be very specific, you need to get onto the prompt engineering, which is why I actually mentioned in the initial slides, prompt engineering is very much required for all the people who want to be on this. So please take that course. Maybe so many online courses are available free, and there are some priced as well. But I think you can take some of those in Udemy and other platforms. right? And but there are some limitations for Gen AI, right? So it's not like it's 100% foolproof and you can do everything in the world. Like I said, one is the determined code. Is it executable or not? ChatGPT will not tell you. That you need to figure out, right? If there are any execution related issues, right? And it cannot identify some of the paths, right? Our very common core problem is X paths or JSONs or IDs, right? So that it cannot identify because it cannot work on any application. It will give you a placeholder, then you have to go and change those, right? But still it is not bad because it is giving 80% of the code. The only 20% you deal with is the test data, right? And some of these things, and there are some limitations as well in terms of, right, how you can actually work on the banking applications. Like for example, if you have a one logins and if you have secured logins, you need to be a little bit careful on the secured logins, right? So and companies are not allowing all the companies, so you need to be careful, and you please read out your company policy before you start using this, because some companies legally are not agreeing to use this. And before I go to finish my talk, I'll the last slide, just a
5
second.
minutes.
Yeah, just 10 seconds. So this is actually 5D approach for a tester profile. I used to present this in all my forums earlier, in my earlier talks and conferences. I just still want to bring it. The reason is because here only two new skills I added. This actually I presented maybe 3-4 years back in one of the forums, and I in most of the forums whenever I attended, right? So I never changed this from the last 3-4 years, right? Because there was no reason for me to change, because still everything was same. Even I was thinking I am presenting the same thing from last 3 years, 4 years. What is this actually? The skill set is not changing for a tester. At least the buckets, high level buckets are not changing, right? But if you look at two new things I added, right, this year in 23, which is prompt engineering and a programming skill. It's not a programming, but it's a kind of programming. You can think it's like a language based, right? Prompt engineering is the use input that you give to ChatGPT. You need to have this skill for sure, and you need to have a tool wise ChatGPT, how it works and how you can actually take the tokens and do integration with your right, with our IDEs, right? So these are the two skills I think you need to learn, and you can have a massive impact, right, as an individual, as a team. So please go ahead and try out your use case, right? What use case you have, you will only know, right? So go and try use cases. So this is what all about ChatGPT.
Thank you very much. Great session, Kiran. We've got, I can see a few questions coming in.
Sure.
There's quite a few observations as well. So maybe start from the end again, because we got some great observations, but there's one question that's come that looks very pertinent. How does the emergence of Gen AI or AI and ML impact the testing industry? Will this development complement or complicate the existing testing practices?
Impact that will this development it's actually complement, right? So maybe, sorry, explicitly maybe I didn't say that word. So it will complement the testing industry for sure. There is no doubt it will complement, right? So the only thing right, where it will complicate is, I don't know putting a slide, but again, rather than a slide, I thought maybe any question comes like this, I'll explain. Complicate where it will do is if you're trying a wrong use case with ChatGPT, right? Like I said, requirements, right? If you're trying to write your requirements using ChatGPT, I think it will be uphill task, right? You're going to go down a rabbit hole and it will become a complication, right? So that's why 80% of the times it complements. So let's take only the complement part of 80%.
Thank you. Interesting question from Aftab. What new skill sets and competencies will be required for testers to effectively work with Gen AI or AI ML tools and frameworks?
See, the new skills and all, I think that's what I put in the last slide, right? So I think for the AI right now, if you are planning to use Gen AI tools, any tools like ChatGPT, the biggest skill you need is a prompt engineering, right? So that's what I highly recommend everyone, whoever actually attending this or seeing this, please go ahead and attend prompt engineering. That is going to save you a lot, because rather than asking random questions to ChatGPT, you will have a structure. There is a framework called RGC, which is a popular framework for prompt engineering. So you can actually go and ask a structured question. So in your team, right, tomorrow when you are asking some question, a tester sitting in other geography asking some question to the ChatGPT, you need the same response back, right? So then only you can leverage. Otherwise, it will be double work for all the testers. So which is why prompt engineering, please learn it. That's the only skill you need. And the second foremost thing is, now we need to start putting some exercise for our brains in terms of what use case I can pick, right? So not just writing the straightforward code, just think about the use cases as well, right along with this.
Thank you. Well, that brings us up to time. I guess we can end. There's a nice, thoughtful comment from Santosh. He says, he sums it up by saying, a knife can be productive for cutting vegetables, but if used without caution, you can cut your finger.
Yes, exactly the same, right? So I think you well said, Santosh. So because it's the same thing, right? Any tool given to anyone, right? So if you don't use it in the right way, then and obviously you're going to end up going down the right negative path. Right? So it's the same case with ChatGPT.
Excellent. Well, thank you. Thanks again, Kiran. Great session.